Hi, my name's John, and for those of you who aren't familiar, I'm working on getting my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. And so today, I wanted to take a look at the morals and decisions of one of the most interesting and unpredictable characters in all of the Kingdom Hearts franchise, and that's Axel, or Lee, or whatever you want to call him. So, if you like this kind of content, you want to see more of it coming from this channel, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and why not even ring that notification bell so you never miss another upload. And while you're at it, make sure to share this video wherever you like sharing things, because it helps the channel so much. But with all that out of the way, let's just jump into the video. So Webster's dictionary defines morality as being the principles concerning the distinction between right and wrong or good and bad behavior. So to do this right, we've got to start from the beginning. The earliest we see of Axel is when his somebody, Lee, meets Ventus in Radiant Garden. While this interaction in and of itself doesn't give us too much of an indication as to where his morals lie at this point in his life, I think that we should still use this as a barometer to kick off our discussion about his moral development, as this is at about the time that he and Isa would begin breaking into Ansem's castle to investigate the cries that are coming from within. And so we need to set the stage and talk a little bit about Lawrence Kohlberg's stages of moral development. So to keep it relatively simple, Kohlberg created a 6-stage justice-based moral development theory, which is heavily focused on the rights of the people involved in any given situation, and tends to lean toward solutions that seem to damage the fewest people. And so the motivations that define each stage are illustrated in this graph, with people within stage 1 commonly being known for avoiding punishment. Stage 2, they'll be aiming at a reward. Stage 3 is characterized by that good boy or good girl attitude. Stage 4 is loyalty to law and order. Stage 5, justice in the spirit of the law. And Stage 6, the universal principles of ethics. But before I dive too far into it, I do need to confront the elephant in the room, in that while this theory is still used to this day, has a lot of utility, and I think it will definitely provide us with great insight into Axel's character development over the course of the series, it definitely has its drawbacks. One of those being that it was exclusively normed when it was created on white men, although it has been found in subsequent years that at least stages 1 through 4 seem to be cross-culturally relevant. But with all that out of the way, let's pick up right where we left off, with Lee and Isa about to infiltrate Ansem's castle.
I can fill you in since we're friends.
Now once the duo are actually able to make it into the castle, they discover an amnesiac girl who we only know as Subject X in the basement in a locked cage. So at this point, we know for a fact that Lee is incredibly close with Isa, but they also become fast friends with Subject X, leading them to breaking into the castle several more times just to visit her, and even formulating a plan to break her out, which is an action that is in direct opposition to the Sage King of Radiant Garden, Ansem the Wise. So I guess the question is, why did he decide to do this? Well, let's start by looking at where he would be at in terms of Kohlberg's theory, and believe it or not, I think that at this point in Lee's life, he would be at stage 3, which is also referred to as the good boy attitude stage. Now I know what you might be wondering, what on earth could that possibly mean? Well, this stage is characterized by trust, loyalty, respect, and gratitude. Essentially, the idea of being good encapsulates the idea that Lee has good motives and shows concern about the people he is close to. So, in the instance of he and Isa becoming apprentices of Ansem the Wise to try and find their friend after she goes missing, this perfectly illustrates that he is not only fulfilling what is expected of him from his friend Isa to work together to find their friend, but also illustrating his loyalty to Subject X, that he does not intend to forget about her, which is a feeling that carries through his time as a nobody all the way up until the end of Kingdom Hearts 3. I mean, I think that one of the most visceral scenes that really illustrates Axel's loyalty to his relationships and living up to what's expected of him from the people around him is the confrontation with Xion, where this happens.
It's for the good of everyone.
But how do you know that? Everybody thinks they're right.
This is right.
They're gonna destroy you!
Please don't hold back, Axel. Promise.
What's your problem? You both think you can do whatever you want. Well, I'm sick of it. Go on, you just keep running. But I'll always be there to bring you back!
In this particular situation, he doesn't follow through with Saïx's orders to destroy Xion, instead knocking her out and bringing her back to the organization. In essence, while Roxas gets very upset with him for how he handles the situation, leading to the two of them not talking for a while, the fact remains that Axel is just trying to do whatever he can based on what he believes would be best for his friends. This is incredibly indicative of that stage 3 level of morality. And while I could throw out countless examples of how he displayed this throughout the course of 358 over 2 days, like when he tried to convince Roxas to come back to the organization so they don't destroy him at the end of the game, or even earlier in the game when he reveals that his actions in Castle Oblivion, where he killed several members of the organization, were a display of loyalty to his childhood friend to permit Saïx to more easily move up through the ranks so that they could commit their coup over the organization. Each and every one of these examples, while he may have shifted his loyalty from Saïx to Roxas and Xion later in the game, really hammer home for me that at least in 358 over 2 days and Chain of Memories, he lies within this third stage of moral development. But since we're talking about morality, I guess I can't really glaze over the fact that, like I mentioned earlier, he killed several other organization members in Castle Oblivion without much hesitation at all. So let's explore that a bit.
Remember the order. You must eliminate the traitor.
So one of Kohlberg's students, James Rest, came up with an expansion off of this moral development model, with Rest focusing more on ethical decision-making and how it's done, which is comprised of 4 components: ethical sensitivity, which is the recognition that an ethical problem exists; moral judgment, which is when an individual determines what is right or wrong in a specific context; moral motivation, which looks at the motivation to follow through with one's choices once they've figured out which course of action is best; and finally, moral character, which is the ability to persist in moral action despite any obstacles in their way. So since we're backtracking a bit to Castle Oblivion, I want to break down the rationale for how Axel made the decision to eliminate Zexion specifically. Because while eliminating all of the traitors topside were still ethical dilemmas in and of themselves, the situation with Zexion was a bit different. While earlier in Riku's story, it seems as though Axel and Zexion are on relatively good terms, after Zexion is able to escape from the real Riku, Axel takes this moment to get rid of him. But how did Axel come to this conclusion? That is, well, I'll be honest, it can't really be considered objectively moral. So utilizing Rest's ethical decision-making model, let's start from the top and look at why Axel actually made this decision without any second thoughts in the first place. So starting with Axel's ethical sensitivity, which is the step where an individual will pinpoint that there is a moral dilemma present and will weigh the pros and cons of any given situation before they actually start moving towards taking that action. So while we don't actively see Axel weighing the pros and cons of this choice, I think that the story gives us more than ample amounts of information in regard to why he does this. It's revealed in the secret report written by Zexion on day 26 in 358 over 2 days that he has become suspicious of Axel, since Axel disposed of Vexen, believing that this may have been an order from Saïx. Now, Axel is no slouch, and if he believed that Zexion might be on to he and Saïx's plan to take over the organization, he would know that this could be very bad for both of them. But I also want to take into consideration why he destroyed every organization member so mercilessly. Well, we know that nobodies don't have hearts, and they are painfully aware of this fact. I mean, in their chats on the clock tower, Axel will often bring up that it's impossible for nobodies to actually be able to feel anything because they're just empty shells that run off of their memories of when they were somebodies. So with this in mind, I don't think that Axel is overly concerned about the death of any organization members that he doesn't have some semblance of a relationship with, namely all of the members that are in Castle Oblivion with him. So now he must make the moral judgment in regard to what to do with Zexion if he is catching on to him and Saïx's plans. So I think that his desire to preserve the secrecy of these plans, even if it means being stuck with, as he would call it, the icky job, led him to come to the conclusion that he must get rid of Zexion, even if there's the slightest chance that he may be catching on to them. Now, I do need to acknowledge that this could be a case of defective reasoning, which according to Rest is essentially why good people make bad or immoral choices. We have no clear-cut indication that, aside from the secret report, which was ambiguous in and of itself, that Zexion was catching on to Axel and Saïx's plans. He was just confused as to why Axel would take the actions that he did. So we can link this defective reasoning back to one of three things: insecurity, greed, or ego. And honestly, while I don't think that Axel is the most egotistical character around by any means, I mean, Xehanort does exist. He certainly knows that he's a cut above the rest of the organization. Listen to how he talks to Marluxia in this scene.
Then, using Naminé and Sora together, you and Larxene overthrow the organization. Am I right? I would say that you are the traitor, Marluxia.
Since when were you suspicious of us?
Do either one of us have the heart to believe anyone?
So you only eliminated Vexen to obtain proof of our plan.
That I didn't want to do, but it was your order.
Oh.
Remember the order. You must eliminate the traitor.
He sees himself as always being 2 steps ahead at all times. And so with this distorted sense of righteousness in the moment, he sees no issue in any of his actions, even though they're morally ambiguous at best. Because while Marluxia may have stood in direct opposition to him and the organization, Zexion's situation was much less clear-cut. It takes very little thought, it seems, for Axel to find the moral motivation to dispose of Zexion, because with his decision of bringing Riku Replica to do the dirty work for him after Zexion narrowly escapes a fight with the real Riku, he finishes the job with the simple explanation that,
"So sorry, Zexion. You just found out way too much."
With this being how he displayed Rest's moral character stage, which encapsulates the ability to follow through with his decisions and his ability to reach his goals. But since this is highly motivated by his desire to protect both himself and Saïx, I would still argue that whether or not this is seen as immoral, there's definitely that defective reasoning at play here. I would still argue that this supports that at this point in the story, he is still at stage 3 of his moral development. But don't get me wrong, he doesn't stay here forever.
Why do I always get stuck with the icky jobs?
As a nobody, let's be honest, Axel's capacity for growth is incredibly and artificially limited. While he can still think, make decisions, and choose what he wants to do, all of these abilities to choose come from his memories of when he was still Lee, which is the curse of being a nobody. While they crave regaining their hearts, from my understanding at least, until they either re-assimilate once both their heartless and nobody are destroyed, or they grow a heart of their own and can become their own person, they will be stuck in a sort of stasis, unable to truly grow past the memories of their past selves that have come to define who they are in the present. So throughout the course of Kingdom Hearts 2, Axel's morality remains fairly consistent with where it was in Chain of Memories and 358 over 2 days, with all of his actions being purely motivated by wanting to see Roxas again, and those very much Stage 3 motivations, all the way up until he sacrifices himself for the sake of Sora. But it's from here on out that Axel, who is now Lee again, his development takes off. While he doesn't have an enormous role in Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance, what we do see shows me that in his reassimilation, he has progressed past Stage 3 of Kohlberg's moral development and into Stage 4, which focuses much more profoundly on an individual's concern for order in society. While it's clear that Lee is still heavily motivated by a desire to help his friends and maintain his loyalty, as he immediately wants to find Isa when he wakes up, he dives straight into action once he's awake and heads to Disney Castle, where he ends up saving the Disney crew, who take him to Yen Sid so he can ask to learn to become a keyblade wielder. Now, unfortunately, Lee doesn't actually get a whole lot of development as a character from this point forward, but we can certainly deduce that he is not making every decision for his own subjective benefit, or simply for the benefit of his friends, but instead we can infer that he sees how he can be useful to the greater good as a keyblade wielder, in addition to his goal of bringing Roxas back, and without consciously realizing it, bringing Xion back too. Because even once he has become a Keyblade Master and is chosen as one of the 7 Guardians of Light, he is acting in the favor of societal order in opposing Xehanort in his 13 Darknesses. While this will have the added effect of helping save his friends, this isn't the sole focus anymore for him, but just an aspect of why he makes the choices that he does. And this is why I think that Lee is such a fascinating character. If you had told me that the cold-blooded killer Axel, whose alliances seem to switch in every scene in Chain of Memories, would grow to not only be one of the most genuine characters in the franchise, but also a Keyblade wielder, I would have called you crazy. But that's what's so amazing about Lee, is that his sense of morality, once he became human again, was able to develop, and he was able to grow past who he was in Chain of Memories in 358 over 2 days, which is hard for honestly anyone to do, real or fictional, while being loyal to his friends and being able to develop that intense sense of trust between them remains an incredibly important piece of his character to this day, as we can see during the ending of Kingdom Hearts 3, with Isa even joining him in the Twilight Town crew at the top of the clock tower. We can also see that Lee has grown to want to fight for the greater good, and I doubt that that will stop even once he and Isa are someday able to find their friend Subject X. I believe that Lee will continue to show his value to the world as a Keyblade wielder, and in turn he will be able to finally achieve his goal of living forever through the memories of everyone he meets.
My name is Lee. Got it memorized?
But that'll do it for today's video, guys, and I want to pass the question off to you. What do you think of Axel and his moral development over the course of the series? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below, and while you're down there, why not liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and why not even ringing that notification bell so you never miss another upload. And I'm super excited to announce that as of this video posting, we have officially launched our ThoughtBubble community Discord. So if you're interested in talking to me, Ali, or anyone else in the community about video games, anime, or anything else you can think of, make sure to check that out in the description down below and come hang out and chat with us sometime. But as always, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, a fantastic rest of your week, and why not even a fantastic rest of your month. And I will see you in the next video. Later.